Boris and Nigel, they are, you know, likeable people. They're the sort of people that you look at and think, I'd love to go for a pint with them. Or maybe not you.
Will you tell us how much you make off Twitter?
They basically said, hi, like we've heard that you threw a milkshake over Nigel Farage. Would you be interested in commenting?
What's it like working in Parliament?
Oh, it's absolutely the best. I'm a bit biased because I do love politics. It's certainly the cheapest pint in central London, that's for sure.
Where did the love of politics come from?
We always spoke about politics in the home, but my dad's actually a massive lefty.
What was the question you asked?
It wasn't actually a question, it was a comment. I said something like, the only things left in Europe should be Tottenham and Man U.
What's your most engaged tweet?
Anything to do with like Nigel always does pretty well, or just anything just generally patriotic. I was in a nightclub and a girl came over to me and said, you're a Tory, and then threw her drink over me.
Hello and welcome to the Behind the Screens podcast with me, Curtis.
Me, James.
Today we are joined by Emily Hewertson. How are you doing?
I'm good, thank you. How are you?
Very, very good. Thanks so much for coming on.
Thank you for having me.
What have you been up to lately?
So I've actually just come back from a little solo travelling adventure around Australia and Fiji, which was really fun. It's actually kind of scary going on my own, but I was brave. I did it. Although my two front teeth did get knocked out 2 days into my trip, so that was a fun little story.
How did that happen?
I got hit in the face by accident, I should add. So then I had to go to the Fijian dentist, which was quite an experience. But I've got a temporary fix and hopefully, I've got a dentist appointment next week, so hopefully having the permanent solution in place by then.
Nice.
I feel like based on some of the things we're going to discuss today, hearing that a situation happened where you'd lost your two front teeth, based on some of the mental things that have happened to you,
Yeah.
I wouldn't have expected it to be in Fiji. So
No.
that's, interesting start.
So Emily, for everyone who doesn't know,
Yeah.
can you just give like a top line intro into who you are and how you've become a bit?
Yeah, sure. So I'm Emily Hewertson. It's kind of hard to describe exactly what I am online, but I run a Twitter account and have been called a political influencer. So I guess we can go with that. I am a card-carrying Tory. Yes, they do still exist. But I have voted for the Brexit Party in the past, and kind of my whole thing is to like make politics more appealing to young people, get them involved.
And when did you start to grow a following or get interest online?
Yeah, so it really kind of happened overnight. I went on a program called Question Time in the audience. Kind of didn't really think anything of it. But when they announced the panel for my show, it was like Nigel Farage, Anna Soubry, who were very big in the Brexit debate at the time. And it was during the European elections. We were supposed to have left the EU by then, but we hadn't. And a lot of Conservative Party members were very frustrated with Theresa May at the time. So I kind of put up my hand and went on a bit of a rant about how I'm a Conservative Party member, but I'm going to vote for the Brexit Party this time round. Made a silly little football joke in there as well. Very on brand for me because I'm also a big football fan, so kind of combined it all together. And literally after that, BBC put out the clip and everyone was like, who is this girl? So I started replying to some like, it's me. And after that, it just kind of like spiraled out of control. I literally remember refreshing my Twitter feed and like every 2 seconds I was gaining like 50 followers or something crazy like that.
That's mad.
Crazy.
When you were like in the audience, were you hoping for that like moment to be able to step up, or did it just kind of happen?
I knew that I definitely wanted to contribute to the debate because like I'm quite a confident person, and obviously I know not that many young people are interested in politics, and I've always thought that more people should be. So I kind of, I was actually the first person to contribute from the audience that night. So literally as soon as it was like, does anyone have anything to say to the audience? I just straight up, like instinctively almost. I was like, right, here we go. I've got to say my piece. So,
where did the love of politics come from?
It's actually quite weird. Like we always spoke about politics in the home, but my dad's actually a massive lefty. So he's a Labour member, went on Remain
Christmas
marches.
must be interesting.
Yeah, good. Got Christmas dinner coming up. Always interesting. Looking forward to that. So it was always spoken about, but really it was school, to be honest. Like I went to a school where there was like current affairs clubs. So that kind of like spurred my interest because I just loved a good argument / debate.
Excellent. So I bet that teed you up perfectly to be the first one, hands in the air.
Exactly.
And what was after that question, you see refreshing your feed and you saw people following you, what was the general like perception and the comments that you were getting back?
It was really mixed, I guess, depending on whether people agreed with me or not.
Yeah.
So a lot of people were saying I was shouting, which, to be fair, I do have a loud voice. So I think it was just passionate, I would say.
You're also in the crowd. Like, you've got to get your point across.
Exactly. And I'm just so enthusiastic about these issues. So I do kind of naturally raise my voice, I guess. But a lot of people were like... there was some comments about my appearance, some saying that I was quite good looking, so that was nice. Then there was also some like, who is this absolute bimbo? So it was mixed. And then obviously I just had people saying like that I was a plant. A lot of people were saying that I was like planted by the BBC. Can confirm I was not. And some people were like, yeah, exactly. You never know. So yeah, like it was a real mix, I think, really depending on whether you agreed with me or not.
And did you... prior to that clip going out, had you been commentating online or been speaking about politics, or was it just
not
that spurred you on to then?
No, yeah, like I always used to say to my friends that I wanted to be Prime Minister. And I remember my school doing like a video and they asked me to feature, and it was like, what do you want to be when you're growing up? And I was like, I want to be Prime Minister. So I definitely like kind of had conversations, and people knew that I was kind of a Tory, especially in my politics A-level class. I was quite proud on the whole Tory thing, and I had got involved locally with my Conservative association. But really, in terms of like the online following, I didn't really put that much online. But after that, I was well and truly out as a Tory. So I thought, I might as well just go with it.
Yeah. You said then about the immediate reaction was about appearance and you being a young person involved in this. I'm going to go straight into some of like the hard questions.
No, go for it.
Looking at a lot of the headlines at the time, there was I think on The Sun, it said young blonde Tory. Yeah. Like immediately it kind of just stripped you down to your appearance. Yeah. Firstly, how do you feel about that?
Yeah.
Like you were very passionate about your point of view. How did it feel that your appearance kind of took the limelight? Yeah,
you are completely right. And a lot of the big tabloids use bikini photos as well, like some from like years ago on like a random family summer holiday, which is crazy. I guess it's kind of like, it's sad, but I guess it is kind of to be expected. Like at the end of the day, I am a young girl. I do like to post the cheeky little bikini picture sometimes on holiday. And I think that it's good in some ways because I'm showing that you can, like kind of do both. Like you can enjoy partying, enjoy all the usual young things that young people like, but also kind of I think like the thing about appearance, it kind of went both ways. People used it against me, but then also the fact that I was kind of like a normal, relatable young person. Also, I get a lot of messages now saying, seeing someone a bit more like you talk about politics has encouraged me to get involved. So that's good. So there's kind of like two sides to it, definitely. But I'd say a lot of the comments I get online are to do with appearance.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. I feel like you were really passionate about a point that if almost anyone else had made that point, it would have been almost like taken on more value. Whereas the furore was just that you were a young person taking an interest in politics. Did that kind of change how you then saw the political landscape? I don't know if that's just making too big of a deal out of it. But.
No, like I think like there is a negative side to it, but then there is also a positive because, like I said, it probably did help to kind of launch my career, if I'm being completely honest, because there wasn't many kind of like young girls that like that to go a bit glam, I guess, out there. So that did help. But yeah, I suppose it didn't change too much my view on the whole political landscape because I was just kind of like doing my thing and people could kind of take me or leave me. And I was very aware that the fact I looked a certain way was, part of the reason that I gained attraction because people, I think especially being young, was expecting me to put up my hand and say something super left wing. So yeah, I'd say it's kind of mixed.
What was the question you asked?
It wasn't actually a question. It was a comment. I basically said that I'd been a Conservative member since I was 16. I was 19 at the time. I've had enough of the Conservative Party. I'm going to be voting for the Brexit Party this year. Obviously, Nigel Farage had a massive grin on when I said that. And then I said something like, the only things left in Europe should be Tottenham and Man U. It was to do with Tottenham and Liverpool. There we go. Good football knowledge there.
I rewatched the clip.
Yeah. So, yeah, I was just...
It definitely wasn't Arsenal. No. So, 8.5 years on since that clip, do you still have the same political views as to kind of what you aired at the time? Do you still feel the same in terms of your staunch support of Brexit?
Yeah, I definitely don't regret Brexit, but I would say that Britain hasn't made the most of Brexit.
Elaborate.
I think obviously one of the kind of biggest reasons that a lot of people voted for Brexit was about sovereignty, and part of that was, controlling our borders, and a lot of people have felt let down by that, because if you keep looking at the numbers, immigration has grew year on year, and I think people thought that Brexit would be the fix, and they haven't been listened to. Even though EU migration is one issue, obviously economic migration from other areas has still continued to grow. But I think it's still important that we have got sovereignty, because it's meant that we've been able to, for example, get rid of the tampon tax because we're not governed by EU law anymore. So yeah, I just think that there's more that we could kind of use with Brexit, and it's a shame really that Labour have got in power. Sorry, had to say something.
Do you think long term we will take better advantage, to quote your sentence back, do you think we'll take better advantage of leaving the European Union?
I really hope so. I always said to people, look, that there will be some kind of immediate, economic consequences that might be negative, but I think overall long term it is for the best, and I think we will eventually see that. But I think it's one of those things that needs a bit of time, and it wasn't all going to happen overnight, but it would be nice to, see
8.5 years.
Yeah, exactly. But I think that, in say 20, 30 years, we'll look back and we'll realise that it was a good decision. Because even if you look at the vaccine rollout, if we were within the EU, we would have been subject to certain rules. But because we had our sovereignty, we're actually able to, focus on getting the vaccine out to our residents.
How do you feel the media portrays young conservatives like yourself?
Yeah.
Do you think it's fair, or do you think it's brutal?
I mean, young conservatives certainly have a stereotype, which is something that I'm trying to change. We don't all drink port or pigeon shoot, although no hate to those that do. Nothing wrong with that, I suppose. I think the right-wing media are actually, trying to... they often do a lot of stories on me and things to try and kind of get out a different image of young conservatives. But I think still fundamentally there is that inherent stereotype that young conservatives must, be living off mummy and daddy's money and must hate poor people and all those kind of things. So, yeah.
Sorry.
No, you go ahead.
So in terms of social media, do you feel like social media is playing more of a part now in terms of getting your message out? And do you think traditional media holds less of a value in actually getting the conversation started? Yeah,
in my personal opinion, I think X is one of the biggest news sources now. I think a lot of my friends get most of their news from X, for better or for worse, compared to kind of traditional news outlets. And you see a lot of, papers, for example, aren't being sold as much. I'd say that online has definitely really helped me, perpetuate my message, which is really good.
And do you feel like X is the place where you're enabled to say anything you want rather than getting cancelled and deplatformed by TikTok or Instagram, for example?
Yeah, I think obviously since Elon Musk has taken over, he's kind of committed to free speech. And I think it's important that we don't live in an echo chamber, even if we see things we disagree with. I think it's actually important to see those things and to openly disagree with them. I think it can be quite dangerous if you start censoring speech. What else was I going to say? Yeah, and also with X, everyone says that they kind of don't have any rules, but actually, if I get a death threat, I've actually found them quite good to be removing, any kind of incitement of violence, for example. I think there was a petition that Nigel Farage should get executed or something, and I literally reported that it was me, and that got quickly taken down. So I think. I think, when it comes to incitement of violence, it's important to kind of tackle those issues as someone who's received a lot of death threats, for example.
And you obviously got different social media platforms. You've got X, you've got Instagram, you've got TikTok. Do you portray a different personality on each platform? Yeah. Or would you say on X, you feel like you can say whatever you want, whereas on Instagram, you don't want to say something in case your account gets deleted?
It's not so much that I do that purposely, but definitely like my Instagram, I mostly don't really post about politics. I keep that more about my life as well, because I think that if you look at my ex, people think that politics is my whole life. And don't get me wrong, I do really love it, but I'll even be on a night out and someone will come up to me and try and start debating me. And I'm just like a few gin and tonics in, and I'm like, probably not the best time to have a political debate. So I try and keep my Instagram a bit more like kind of what I've been up to in my actual life, to kind of portray that side of me as well, to show that I do love politics, but I'm also like a normal person.
You love holidays.
Yeah,
things as well.
I am a big holiday kind of person, and drinks with the girlies, of course, very standard.
You mentioned about the echo chamber and kind of avoiding that on Twitter. Keen to hear your thoughts on the Muskification of X. I keep calling it Twitter and X. I've got to decide which one. But
it's always known as Twitter, isn't it?
Yeah, just
like
just
X
is,
/
isn't it?
Twitter.
Yeah. Speaking anecdotally, especially
I love it when you bring in a big word. It's my favourite.
I've got my thesaurus down here. Throughout like the American election, my feed was dominated by Elon Musk and kind of pushing his messaging. I don't follow Elon Musk, but the For You page. Do you think there is a danger that we are falling back into the same trap that mainstream and traditional media of controlling a political message? This is supposed to be the global, what do they call it? The global town square. This is supposed to be the global town square, but one voice is louder than the other.
Yeah, it's interesting actually, because I don't know if you've heard this, but there's been like a new social media created called like Blue Sky Social.
Yeah,
and a lot of...
I've got it and none of my mates are on it. So
yeah, that's the problem. That is always the
really...
problem. I think it was the same with Threads.
Yeah.
Like people, it becomes a thing for like a few days, or like there was Parler back in the day, which was more of a right-wing platform.
Would that be a political or a holiday platform for you?
Political. Anything where it's like righty, political, anything like pictures, lifestyle.
Nice.
That's kind of my rule. But yeah, no, I think there is a danger of that, because so many people, for example, that are towards the left have kind of moved over to Blue Sky Social or whatever it's called. There is a danger, because I actually don't want Twitter to become kind of dominated by right wings. I actually want it to become a forum for everybody to express their political opinions, and for it to actually be the home of free speech on both sides. Problem is, if you're getting all these people leave to a new platform, then you're right, it is in danger of becoming an echo chamber, which I don't think any kind of echo chamber is healthy, even if it's something I always agree with. I'm like, no, I need to see the other side too, because that's what makes healthy debate, right?
And when you post on X, when you press that post button, do you care what people say in terms of like if you get hate or trolls or people coming at you? Is it something, or do you crave it?
No, I definitely used to like get really affected by the hate. Like there was times where I had to take breaks from Twitter because I was taking it so personally. But now I just kind of think like I live in people's heads rent free so much sometimes. Like people just randomly tweet about me that I don't follow or anything, but they follow me, and I'm just like, why are you thinking about me on a random Thursday, 2 p.m? So yeah, it definitely used to affect me, but I've kind of just realized. And also what I have found, which is quite interesting, is that people will be quite, rude or nasty or send me death threats or whatever online. But in person, people are actually really respectful. Even if they don't agree with me, they'll come up and and it's like, it's really, really weird because online, I honestly get horrible stuff every single day. And I've literally never had a bad reaction, except I think twice in person. But all the other times, people have just been really understanding.
Let's say people on the left that you're
Can
debating
I ask first,
Yeah.
what were the two bad reactions?
Okay.
Sorry.
One time there was just, this one wasn't that bad, but one time there was a group of guys and I could hear them go like, oh, Emily, oh, she's this, she's that. And it was just me by myself and I could hear them. I think I was waiting for a friend at the time, and like that just felt like really intimidating because it was a massive group and I could just hear them talking about me and like looking over and laughing. So that was just a bit more intimidating. But then the other time, which was a bit worse, is that I was in a nightclub and a girl came over to me and said, you're a Tory, and then threw her drink over me.
What did you do then? Just
I was
stood there in shock?
Absolutely fuming. I was fuming. So I like very on brand, but I actually tweeted about it. And I feel kind of bad.
Was you still dripping wet as
yeah,
you were tweeting?
yeah, I was like, I'm not having that. But I do feel bad about this. Like looking back, I probably wouldn't have done this, but I did actually tweet her name because I found out what her name was. And then I heard that she got a lot of hate, which like, that's why I regret it, because I don't think that was fair to do. But I was
she
just,
did
like,
pour a drink over your head.
Yeah, I know. And then I did actually like, I did put a complaint in with the police, not because I necessarily wanted her to get, you know, like prosecuted and ruin her life over that, but more because that was a time where I was getting a lot of death threats. I was kind of scared that if I didn't report this or something wasn't done about this, then things could get more and more sinister. It's kind of like with the Milkshake, Nigel Farage thing. Like, people are like, oh, it's only a milkshake. But the problem is it could be a milkshake this time and then like acid the next time. Do you know what I mean? So I think you do have to set a precedent with these things.
We want to talk about that Nigel Farage thing.
Yeah.
But I had the question before you interrupted, which was, so you obviously debate people on Twitter from like the left, and if you've met them in person, what's that been like? Has it just been, oh, okay, yeah, it's fine, you're all right?
Yeah, it is weird actually, because
I imagine there's a lot of like heated conversations and things that get said.
Yeah, no, I don't know if you guys know who Owen Jones is.
Yeah, I know Owen Jones.
But he can get a bit rude, kind of online to people. But I disagree with a lot he says, and I've put out tweets and stuff. But I did see him on the tube randomly because he actually lives quite near me, and he was actually kind of rude to me in person. I was like, hang on a second, like I thought we kind of knew that we had these debates online, but I thought he kind of came up to me, he was like, oh, well, I know who you are, and I was like, yeah, and then he was just like, yeah, and then just walked off. I was like, ouch. I kind of normally find that even people I disagree with, like, do you guys know Femi? Yeah. Oh gosh, all the big
we tried to play it down so that we didn't get caught out.
Oh, I do, yeah. Yeah, like Femi, obviously disagree with him massively on Brexit, but actually, like, I've met him a few times and we always have a pleasant conversation. I think that's important, though, to push, that you can disagree with people politically and still get on with them. I've had friends, sadly, well, I say friends, but after the whole question time thing, who basically, even though I've been friends with them my whole life, decided to go online and say all this, like, bad stuff about me. I just thought, hang on, you're not really my friend. You've liked me for all these years. Now suddenly, just because of my political beliefs or the way that I vote, you're going to betray me like that. So that's interesting.
That's interesting.
I do want to delve into a few more points around Twitter X. It's something I find really interesting since they've changed the platform to be more monetizable and better for a creator. Has that changed the way you've used the platform? Because obviously you have Twitter X Premium, whatever it's called, you can earn money off of your tweets. Do you actively like post things that will get engagement, will get views, and will you tell us how much you make off Twitter?
I won't tell you how much I make because I just won't. It's not enough. All I'll say is not enough to live on, but it's a nice bit of extra side income. So it's more of like a side hustle than like a main job for me. But I think some people do, from what I've heard. I think like the really big accounts that get millions. Like I think you can make an income, like a full-time income off it. But in terms of, it is so tempting because you see people getting millions of views, and I know exactly the sort of stuff I need to say to get that. But I just can't bring myself to do it because I'd rather just, actually state what I believe in rather than go down that road. It would make me more money, but, at the sake of, just saying stuff for a bit of controversy, it's just not for me. I just can't bring myself to do it. I know that a lot of people do it. Even some of my friends off Twitter have even said that they say stuff and like there are definitely kind of techniques you can use, but I haven't.
What's your most engaged tweet ever? Do you know what that would be?
That is a great question. I used to, when the first question time thing came out, to be fair, one of them was when I got a photo with Nigel because like he's got his like hand around me, so everyone's just like made loads of comments like that. But that always gets anything to do with like Nigel always does pretty well, or just anything just generally patriotic. People love a bit of.
Who would be the most inspirational, in your opinion, political leader or figure that you've met?
I do think Nigel Farage is very, very brave, and also he is very likable. Anyone that's met him only has good things to say, and I've actually got quite a good friendship with Nigel. And when I've kind of been at events with him and stuff, one thing I always notice about him is he's so polite to all of the staff. Always takes time for anyone that wants to come over and take a photo. And I do think he's one of those politicians, and there aren't that many that could probably go to the majority of pubs in the country, maybe except from Liverpool, and someone would buy him a pint.
Or a milkshake.
Or a milkshake.
Perfect time to move on to.
Then on the other side of the coin, who would be, in your mind, the worst political person you've met or come across? I can imagine you've met a lot of people. And
I'm trying to think. I think there's definitely some politicians that I know, I won't name names, that just...
you can name names.
I think there are some politicians that I don't dislike, but they're very focused on their career rather than... the most important thing about being an MP is making time for your constituents and actually making them their lives better. I know that there's a couple of big politicians that don't even kind of ever go to their constituency. Or I should say ex-MPs. That'll give you a bit of a clue. Major MPs that don't really make time for their constituents and just really...
Well, I did want to ask, and you're close with Nigel,
yeah.
And there's obviously a lot of chat about him not visiting his constituency. What are your thoughts on that?
Look, I think it is hard for Nigel because obviously he does do more. He is also a leader of a party. No one was so focused on how much Rishi Sunak visited his constituency, or even Keir. Nobody asked how much Keir's in King's Cross, for example. So I do think there's a lot of focus, and obviously his connections with America. When he was in America, that was a big focus. But I think he kind of had said to Trump that he would be there to support his campaign. And I think as long as, his team, because how it works in an MP's office is a lot of the casework goes through the team, and that's how it gets dealt with. So as long as his team are really solid and are helping the constituents, then I think that's important.
And what do you think about the rumours going around that Elon Musk's going to donate 100 million to Nigel Farage to win the next election?
Yeah, I did see that. I think that's interesting. I'm not sure it will happen, to be honest, but we'll see. That changes a lot if it does. So that would be crazy.
They're trying to bring in a law where he couldn't actually donate before he donates.
Yeah, that would be the sort of thing that I could imagine.
I think
Parliament trying to do.
I'm not going to share my opinion on it, but I feel like it is interesting that the whole Elon Musk stuff is just more open and more visible. I mean, how many years of ex-media company been donating millions to support each campaign? It's interesting.
Yeah, it happens all the time. And
yeah.
I think it's just because it's such kind of a publicised
Who's
person.
the biggest?
Wall Street Journal.
Murdoch, isn't he the biggest donor to Conservatives?
Yeah, exactly. There are a lot of donors. It just seems that because Elon Musk is so kind of in the picture. But I have seen people on the right actually say that, is this actually a good thing? Because it's kind of basically foreign influence. And is that really a road we want to go down? So I have seen that argument made too.
But it's also a road that's impacted both sides of the political spectrum over the years.
Yeah, exactly.
Maybe not a conversation for today. Let's go on to the Nigel.
Go on.
Go on.
Well, I was going to ask, you're conservative, you're very open with that. Where do you feel like the Conservative Party is at this current time? They've obviously got a new leader. Do you think she's the right person to get the Conservatives back into power?
Yeah, so first of all, I think Rishi Sunak's government was an absolute car crash. That was embarrassing. That was the only time I've really been embarrassed to say that I'm Conservative. And to be honest, I even wrote out my resignation letter to the Conservative Party, and I was going to join Reform. But then I actually thought, I am a Conservative. I think I'm in the right party. It's actually the more liberal types that are in the wrong party. So I said, I'm going to give this new leader a chance. I originally backed Priti Patel, and then she got eliminated 24 hours after I announced I was backing her. Then did Robert Jenrick, who was in the final two, and then obviously Kemi won. And look, the thing with Kemi is she was part of the last government, so that is a bit of a concern. But I'm willing to give her a chance. I think she says a lot of the right things. So I'm just hoping so. But at the moment, I just don't think the Conservatives are being bold enough, to be honest. It seems like Reform are kind of getting all the attention. So I think, the Conservatives need to be a bit more bold because, Labour are quite unpopular right now due to certain decisions that were made in the budget, etc. So this is really our chance. If not, Reform are going to kind of...
Which age demographic do you feel is the most important, that whichever party wins has to win that vote for them to then get in?
Yeah, it really depends, because I think with the Conservatives, like you don't actually need to get young people to vote Conservative in order to win. Like traditionally, not that many young people vote Conservative. So I kind of think probably for the Conservatives, it's like the millennials, because they'll always kind of have the more elderly vote, and they will always struggle a bit more with the younger vote. So I think they really need to kind of nail on the millennials.
Do you think the Tory vote is going to continue to dwindle as the elderly sadly pass away? Or do you think as the 20s, 30s become 40s, 50s, they will become more right-wing?
Yeah, no, the second option. I think naturally people just get a bit more right-wing when they're older. Like, for example, my sister, she was always left-wing and then she got her first tax returns. Just saying. So I think kind of as you have more possessions and more of a stake in society, you do naturally kind of lean to the right. But I think that's why it's really important for the Conservatives to sort out the home ownership problem. That's where we've really failed, because we're the party of aspiration. One of those things is being able to own your own home, and the Conservatives have just failed on that. We haven't been building enough homes, so that's definitely a big problem.
I was going to save this for later, but I feel like good time now. If you became PM tomorrow, what would be the first thing you would do?
Bit of a boring one, but I'd get rid of inheritance tax. I think it is the most evil tax of all.
Okay, devil's advocate. I can't remember the exact number. Isn't it something like 53 billion or something obscene that powers the country?
Wait, sorry, say that again.
From the inheritance tax. I feel like...
Let me just check.
Get even the facts right.
£7.5 billion. So
yeah.
Is that a year?
A year. Up £500 million from the year before.
Yeah.
So I agree with the kind of fundamental element of it, but suddenly if £7.5 billion disappears from the budget, where would you find that from? Well, you are PM.
Yeah, for example, considering that they're trying to cut out smoking, which makes a lot of good tax, I'd bring that back for starters.
Smoking in pubs. And then...
Yeah. Well, I was watching something yesterday, I can't remember what it was. Oh, The Holiday. You know, The Holiday? We watched like the first 5 minutes and there was a guy smoking inside. And I was like, remember those days?
I was in Germany at the weekend.
You can smoke everywhere, can't you?
Smoking lounges in the airport. Seems dystopian.
Also, it's like even with like football matches and stuff, when you go abroad, you can actually like drink in the stands.
Yeah.
Instead of just downing your pint like, before half
I just
time.
feel like over here, everyone's just going to throw it at the players.
Yeah, exactly.
If I see where I am at the Brentford game, like here, and the guy taking the corners there,
you are one
he's
of the...
He's getting a pelter with a pint.
You are one of the trolls.
Cool. Next question.
I feel like there's so much more on social media that I do want to go into, so I am going to keep us on there.
This is a social media podcast.
It is indeed socially powerful. Interesting in the way you have structured kind of your socials. Twitter, like your numbers on there are amazing. Instagram, that's kind of your fun one. TikTok, you've never really found any traction on there. No. This year, I think, has been the year where politics has moved on to TikTok. We've seen, obviously, Kamala Harris. She built a social strategy which ultimately didn't work, but it was all about fast content, memes, appealing to the younger demographic, and everybody did say she won social media. Do you think things like TikTok and kind of taking the content out of politics and stripping it back, do you think that's going to change the way people perceive and view politics moving forward?
I don't think hugely, but I do think it does do one thing, and I think that is engage younger people. And I think that's something Reform have done quite well, and Nigel is quite good at. And that's kind of getting, young people to kind of get involved and read about politics. So I think that is a good thing. For example, I know that Nigel did like Cameo and some of the really viral videos of him talking about Among Us and other Gen Z references. So I think it can be good for engaging, but do I think it's the be all and end all? Probably not. Okay. I think it's a factor, but I don't think, like, for example, with Kamala Harris, she got a good kind of social media strategy in terms of her numbers, but did it, decide the result? Probably not.
Elon Musk had the social media strategy.
It definitely helps though, but I think that's one thing that Conservatives have never really been good at, and that is doing social media well. Seems that they are always on like a 3-week delay of memes.
Yeah,
so they're like
terrible.
Yeah, exactly. So you can tell that it's kind of like an older person trying to like appeal to the kids.
Yeah.
How do you do, fellow kids? The one with like the skateboard. Do you know the meme? I'm doing exactly that. The how do you do, fellow kids? No.
I probably have seen it, but can't remember.
Okay, fair enough. Another kind of deeper one. So you're in like a really unique position, I would say, in that you are a young woman, you are a Tory, involved and passionate about politics, and you're very opinionated, very outspoken. So I think you're in quite a unique position, and it attracts a lot of attention, not always for the right reasons. I'd be keen to know, like, do you feel like you can distinguish between genuine political feedback and responses that people are giving you and just misogyny? Because I feel like it would all kind of blend into one.
I think, it is a hard one, but I think kind of over the years I've kind of like perfected the skill a bit more. I can kind of tell who's actually, being reasonable and being sincere in their comments. And then I can tell the people that genuinely, no matter what I say, are just going to be, difficult and try and get under my skin. So I think it's taken me time. And to be honest, I used to take everything really personally. But actually, I've realized that, if you want good debate to work, people can disagree with you and they're actually coming from, a perfectly reasonable space.
I'm going to start talking about social media now and let us move on.
Okay.
We can
We can always delve back in.
Sure, we'll get back into it in about 30 seconds.
Excellent. Well, we need to now talk about the Nigel Milkshake situation. For those very few that aren't aware, talk us through like what happened there.
It's probably the weirdest thing that's ever happened to me in my entire life. So I was just kind of minding my own business. And I see that I've got like a Facebook message request. So this was during the general election period. I was working for an MP at the time. So I saw I got this Facebook message request. And it was from a journalist. I can't remember. I think it was Mail Online. No hate. But they basically said, hi, like we've heard that you threw a milkshake over Nigel Farage. Would you be interested in commenting? And I thought it was a bit of a wind up. So then I just like go onto Twitter and I've just got all of these like direct messages saying milkshake girl. And some people were like, go you, so proud of you for doing that. And then others were like, how dare you, your mother would be ashamed. And I was literally so confused because this had happened an hour before. And what I kind of pieced together had happened is a girl had thrown a milkshake over Nigel Farage. And somehow this conspiracy that it was me had came about. And people said I look like the girl. I don't know what you guys think. But personally, I just think we both had blonde hair. And I think that people love a conspiracy. So a left-wing account had basically found the photo of me and Nigel at an event a few years ago. And had put that against a screenshot of the girl throwing the milkshake over Nigel. And her hair was kind of like blowing inside her face. So granted, you couldn't really see her face. And people were basically saying that this was a setup to make Nigel look better. So he can be like, oh yeah, I survived another milkshake attack. And that it was all staged by me, but I had nothing to do with it. So it was just like, I just can't even fathom how weird it must be. Just like going on your phone, like just imagine going on your phone, just being accused. And like you're literally not even in the same part of the country. It was just the weirdest thing.
What happened to the person that threw the actual milkshake?
She ended up getting fully convicted.
Wow.
I think she got a fine or something. I'm not sure.
Did you ever think when you were studying politics A level that you would get a DM from the Mail Online saying, did you throw a milkshake over Nigel Farage?
Honestly, like I've had a few like pinch me kind of moments, but yeah, that was absolutely. I think that takes the biscuit. It's honestly so weird. Like I can't believe it, but it was quite funny looking back.
Did you and Nigel ever talk about it?
I know that Nigel got asked, and apparently he sent his regards, and that he's really sorry that I was kind of embroiled all of this. But I think his niece actually went into school, and they were all like, "Oh!" Apparently, she said that they were all going, "Oh, it was Emily. Nigel knows Emily." I was like, "It wasn't me."
You definitely should have bought him a milkshake.
Yeah, I know. If I next time I see him, I think
is that the most like crazy
done.
rumor you've been associated with?
Absolutely. Can you really beat that? Like, come on now.
Well, there's many years of you involved in the political landscape.
Gosh,
I
know.
think it could be a lot.
Crazy.
In terms of then like the reaction, obviously you were. It was like a pile-on. Everybody kind of assuming and. What did that feel like?
Yeah, I mean, Twitter just loves, or X, I keep saying Twitter, it's now X, just loves a pile on. And I've had my fair share, to be honest, but this one was absolutely crazy. But it was just so, like, laughable. I think someone even volunteered to go in a boxing match against someone that kept saying it was me to prove that it wasn't me and donate all the proceeds to charity. So I was like, wow, kind of, this could turn into a good cause, I suppose. So, yeah, that was just absolutely so ridiculous. It was quite funny. And then I had all the kind of like BBC Verify and fact checkers contact me saying like, would you be able to comment and stuff? And then because there were quite a few big accounts that were trying to defame me, I did actually consider taking legal action, and I kind of had that proposed to me. But I decided that like, is it really worth it? Just for saying that I was a milkshaker? Because I think it was cleared up in the end. So
fair enough. What advice would you give to someone who has just been then thrown into that sort of craziness? What would be your advice to deal with it?
I think what you mean just in like politics, like just say the kind of like
if you're suddenly thrown into this situation, if suddenly someone thinks I've thrown a milkshake over James, like how
you better not.
No, just you wait. Like it must have been just insane. Like
I think like the first thing is just to like breathe, because like it's actually crazy when you're just getting like hundreds of messages, and some of them are like really, really nasty. Like, how could you do this? Like, you're a shame to society. Like, you're the scum of the earth. I think I got. So that was nice. So I think the first thing is just to like breathe, because the thing with things like this is that they do blow over. You can have a really bad day on social media, and then 2 days later, it's been completely blown over. It is funny though, because I do still get people come up to me in the street and they're like, "Milkshake girl," obviously joking. So that's quite funny that that's kind of become a bit of my legacy. I'm not sure. After all my amazing political commentary, I'm known as the girl that was accused of throwing a milkshake over Nigel Farage.
Do you get recognised a lot?
I'm surprisingly I do actually. It really shocks me every single time, because I'm just like a girl who just tweets, and then people are coming over, and then I always get the, "Can I have a photo? It's just for my friend though." I'm like, "Is it?"
Where's the weirdest place you've been recognised?
In an airport. That was quite cool. I'm trying to think where else. There have actually been some really weird ones. I'm trying to think. On a bus. A good one is I was actually getting a train from Euston, and the train inspector actually recognised me and upgraded me to first class.
Wow,
nice.
So that was good.
That's using political influence.
Yeah, I know.
I want to go back to the "you're in charge" scenario. What would be the one lavish thing that you would allow all MPs to claim on expenses?
I like that question. That's legit.
No, my answer is
not milkshake.
We've got to be responsible with taxpayers' cash, so I couldn't possibly comment. Although a nice bottle of champagne maybe.
Nice. Prosecco. I feel like Prosecco.
Yeah, Prosecco and politics is kind of my brand.
What's the long-term vision? What do you want to be an MP? Do you want to be Prime Minister?
So I go through stages. Like when the hate's getting really bad online, I'm thinking like, if I'm at a point where I have kids, do I really want to put my family through all of this? But then like there's just something about politics that just like draws you in. And I've tried to kind of do corporate jobs in the past. Like I was on a good finance grad scheme, but the draw of politics is just so overwhelming. So yeah, we'll see. But I definitely want to stay in the politics world, and maybe a little stint as Prime Minister. Would you guys vote for me?
What's the process of becoming an MP? How do you get nominated?
Yeah, so it's done like party by party, but the Conservative Party have a list. It was quite controversial recently, actually, because they kind of put a lot of former MPs into like some of the safer seats, and there'd been people that had been working really hard, like local councillors in that areas that were kind of snubbed. But basically, there's like a party list, and they rank you of how good of a candidate they think you are, and then each association, if the current MP isn't standing again, 3 people will be put forward by CCHQ, that's like the Conservative headquarters, and then the association vote on those 3 people, and then you get selected to run for that party in that seat. So it's actually really, really quite hard, especially in a big party like the Conservatives where there's loads of candidates. It's really hard because you have to get into the top 3 by CCHQ and then get picked by the association. And you have to go through the whole stage of interviews to even get on the list. So it is definitely hard. If you go for a party like Reform where they're a bit newer, I'm sure it's kind of easier to get your foot in the door.
So what year?
Well, to be fair, I reckon, how Labour are heading, I think there'll be a lot of, winnable Conservative seats in the next election. So watch this space, guys. But I have to know, will you guys vote for me?
Well, it depends if you're in South East London. So, yeah.
Come on, good answer. I doubt, hopefully not.
It's a politician's answer.
Yeah, unfortunately, I don't think London is the best place to win as a Tory. So hopefully I'm somewhere a bit more leafy.
Northern.
So, yeah.
Or
northern.
Do you think Reform will have more seats than the Conservatives next election?
No, to be honest, I just don't. I think Reform will do really well, but the thing about Reform and kind of these parties is how our kind of electoral system works, is the way that it's done on seats. Reform support is quite spread out. So even though they'll get a lot of the vote, like the overall popular vote, actually in individual seats, it'll be a lot harder for them to win because you have to have concentrated areas of support, if you know what I mean, in order to win seats.
Do you think that's a fair method?
I go through stages, but one of the craziest facts I find is that Jeremy Corbyn got more votes in the UK in 2019 than Keir Starmer did in 2024. And obviously Keir Starmer won this massive majority. Jeremy Corbyn had an absolute disaster. So that is crazy. Yeah. So I've always been a big fan, well, not a big fan, but I've always thought that, first past the post, what we currently have is kind of like the best of a bad bunch. But I am starting to see that it just doesn't represent how people actually feel anymore. So my opinion on that is starting to shift, and maybe we kind of need some sort of in-between model.
Who would you rather have in charge of the country right now, Keir Starmer or Jeremy Corbyn?
Keir Starmer, and that pains me to say, but Jeremy Corbyn I think would have been a whole another ball game. But to be honest, hopefully neither at the next election.
Dead or alive, 3 dinner guests, not Starmer or Corbyn. No, we'll keep them alive for now. 3 dinner guests from history, dead or alive. Who would you pick?
Maggie T, obviously. That's if
Would
you
you
ask,
want her dead or alive?
alive, obviously. So sad I never got to meet her. But I think if you ask any kind of Conservative woman, and the other one's a bit stereotypical as well, Winston Churchill. You guessed it. Who's the third one? You know who I'd pick? Because he's an absolute hoot a minute. And we've already mentioned him, Nigel Farage.
I thought you were going to say Boris.
No, Boris is also a hoot. I was actually at his Christmas drinks the other night. So
I saw the picture. It's a fantastic picture.
But the thing about Nigel and Boris is that they are personalities, and that's why people do actually really like them. Like I was campaigning for an MP at the recent election, a Conservative MP, and honestly, the reaction we got on the doorstep is that we're not voting Conservative because we can't believe what they did to Boris. A lot of people feel really betrayed by that whole situation. And I think, Boris and Nigel, they are, likeable people. And they're the sort of people that you look at and think, I'd love to go for a pint with them. Or maybe not you, but...
I'd love to go for a pint with them. Yeah, absolutely. I think they... Yeah. It's the genuine person that they are. I can never really tell, but I'd definitely go for a pint with them, that's for sure.
From my experience, Nigel especially, he's like, what you see is what you get with Nigel.
I do think more so with Nigel.
Because if you saw him on I'm a Celebrity, you actually kind of got to see a more authentic side, and there was some really nice scenes with his daughter. And even people that disagree with him say that, you know, he's actually a very pleasant guy.
Yeah, just a British bloke, isn't
he? Just loves a pint and a pie.
Don't we all?
Why do you think that the British public are so disillusioned with the mainstream parties?
I think they feel really let down, to be honest with you. I think one of the biggest things is immigration. Comes back to the whole Brexit vote. People felt like they were voting to, you know, slow down immigration, and that just hasn't happened. We've seen it rise and rise, like even with the Conservative government, and that's continued. And I think people are just looking for an alternative. I mean, I'm just talking about the right, but it's also happening on the left with like the Green Party. And I think it's just kind of this idea that people are just sick of the status quo. I think people are a lot more miserable recently, especially since COVID. And I think people just are looking for a change, and they think that, you know, giving a completely new party a chance might actually offer them a bit of a change and a bit of optimism.
So how come you think the Conservatives can win the next election?
Because I just think
do you think you can like get rid of all the things that have happened over the last, 14 years? Would it have long?
The thing is that the British public do have quite a short-term memory, and I think it's very easy to be in opposition in many ways because you just constantly kind of point out all the negatives that the current party are doing, and I will always back that people like Labour government is always going to be worse than the Conservative, in my opinion. I know I would say that, but I think even now a lot of people have buyer's remorse. I think Keir Starmer is now the most unpopular, definitely not popular Prime Minister in history, which is actually crazy if you think of like Liz Truss and even Boris at his worst moments, and Rishi. So I think just with how, and I think there's also this big feeling of distrust. A lot of the things that Keir Starmer's done, he never said in his manifesto, and I know all parties do this. So I think kind of bringing trust back into politics is really important, and that's something Reform are trying to do by having a really five set kind of principles that they're following, and that kind of idea that we've been so let down and our trust has been betrayed so many times by the two main parties. Maybe it's time to kind of bring in someone new to see if they actually stick to their promises.
I think your point then of the worst government is always the government that's in charge. I think it's so much easier. Like I found that online as well. Like as a Tory, when we had a Tory government, like I'd get so much worse hate. Yeah. But now it's just so easy to just, you know, criticise everything that Labour are doing. And I find that like everyone's just kind of on board with it. So it's actually much easier kind of being in opposition, even as a commentator.
Do you think there's a lot more people like of your age more open to talk about politics online and not be afraid of what they're saying?
I think X is quite good for this because I have got quite a lot of messages saying that kind of seeing more people talking online, like me, for example, has kind of encouraged them to have own conversations with their friends. But then again, my kind of reality is when I speak to my friends, a lot of them aren't voting still. So yeah,
what do you think is going to take to get people that don't vote to vote?
A lot of my friends say that they don't feel like their vote will make a difference. And to be honest, a large part of that comes back to the first past the post. If you live in a constituency where it's always going to be Conservative or always going to be Labour, it does feel like your vote is a bit pointless. But I think also kind of when I speak to my friends, they just like, I don't feel like I'm anywhere near owning a home. Don't really have that stake in society. So I just kind of feel like my vote is meaningless.
Do you think a lot of people aren't educated on politics as well?
I think that's like I think I'm kind of mixed on that because I think that's like a lot of young people get that if they say something that people don't agree with, they're like, well, you just need to educate yourself. So I kind of hate that phrase, educate yourself, because I think it's quite often used just because you disagree with someone. Like I disagree with you, that must mean that you're not educated. Like I kind of hate that whole feeling.
It's probably more around like, not educated is probably the best word, but like being informed of what's going on and taking an interest. Yeah,
I think there's definitely a point that there is still this kind of stigma that politics isn't that interesting. But really, if you look at all the absolute chaos, like I know it was kind of bad times at the time, but like with the whole like Liz Truss thing, like Boris Johnson, like we've had so many different prime ministers since kind of 2010.
It's like a soap opera though, isn't
Yeah.
it? Like, I was
Quite
listening to
entertaining,
LBC
though.
every day when it was bad because it's...
You have to take an interest because it affects you. Like every single thing that people come into power and do is going to affect you in some way, shape or form. Regardless if you don't think it does on a day-to-day basis, it will eventually.
That's what I try and tell my friends, but I don't think they see it like that. They just genuinely don't think that, like throughout the last few governments. But really, they've only known a Tory government since, you know, kind of 2010. So maybe they'll start to see that actually a new government does kind of impact them. Now we've got a complete change.
Yeah, I agree entirely with the point. But again, to play devil's advocate, you could argue that people don't play an interest because they don't think that their vote matters. I think every vote matters, but
I think we're saying the same point,
Yeah.
but in a different way.
yeah, maybe. Second to final question. If we were to give you 500 grams of mince, what would you do with it? Mince.
Like, any specific kind of mince?
Beef.
If you're going to say lamb, I was going to say, have you seen, okay, perfect. Have you seen
Anna Paul's pasta?
Yeah.
I've made it.
What is it?
So good. It's
I put
so
too
good.
much salt in it. Anna Paul, TikToker.
No. She was only, I think she was previously or she might still be, she was an OnlyFans creator.
But her mum made this pasta online.
Okay.
Really, really nice.
It went viral. It's like yogurt, which sounds awful, with like mince, with this like paprika and butter sauce with some pasta, and it sounds like it'd be horrific, but honestly, absolutely slaps. So I think I'd make a big bowl for that. Invite all my friends over. Perfect.
Excellent. And now on to the serious final.
This is a serious one. I try and ask this as well. Who should we get on the podcast? From your perspective, who would you want to hear and listen to? It could be someone that you follow. It could be someone you know. It could be someone in your circle. It could also be another political commentator that you like or don't like, for example.
Well, I was going to say, Bojo's just released a book, so he's trying to, promote that. So you never know. Yeah. Who else would I like to see? To be honest, what I always think it'd be interesting is, how we were kind of having a discussion about how a lot of young people that don't vote and aren't interested in politics. I always think it'd be interesting to actually sit someone down like that and be like, so why don't you vote? Like, what would so maybe one of my friends?
Sure.
Do you know what I mean though? I genuinely I think because people obviously, when it comes to politics, they go straight for the people that are actively involved. But it would actually be quite interesting to hear from those kind of people that aren't involved. What would make you get involved? All of those kind of things.
I don't think you or I are the people that should be educating the youth on politics.
I feel like there's one bit we didn't really talk about. You said you were working for an MP. Were they actually in the House of Parliament when you were working for them?
Yeah, so I was working for them in Parliament as their press officer. So I was kind of dealing with all of their media, kind of media like relations. However,
we doing her Twitter.
Sorry, I was advising her on her Twitter as well. But it's actually a bit of a funny story. You know how we're kind of joking about how I've taken a few L's. I think they're quite funny L's. This was, you've guessed it, yet another L. I was actually so I was working in a very corporate job, and then I kind of figured that it wasn't for me, and I knew that there was going to be a general election this year. So I was like, if I want to get in, obviously while the Conservative Party jobs are a bit more in abundance, probably now is my time. So this was like kind of May of this year. So anyway, got my job with an MP that I'd met before. So absolutely loved her, amazing boss. 8 days into my new job that I was absolutely loving, like dream, working in Parliament, living my best life. The rumours start swirling that Rishi's going to call a snap election, bearing in mind that everybody thinks the election is going to be in November. So I was thinking this would be, 6 months in Parliament and, perfect. But no, he decides, just as Rishi Sunak couldn't make things even worse, he didn't even remember his umbrella to announce it. And so literally I was working in Parliament for 8 days, but obviously I stayed with that MP until...
What's it like working in Parliament?
It's absolutely the best. There's just such a buzz. I mean, maybe I'm a bit biased because I do love politics, but there's such a buzz. There's also a lovely terrace to have a nice drink on.
The cheap cafe as well.
There is subsidised drinks and foods, which I know always causes a bit of controversy. So it is certainly the cheapest. Yeah, it's certainly the cheapest pint in central London. That's for sure.
Tell me, with that MP, how many people were working was it a woman?
Yeah, it was a woman.
Working for her.
Yeah, so there
Like
were,
the team.
so this is kind of typical. So there's like an office manager who kind of like oversees her staff. There's 2 caseworkers, and they're the ones that deal with the constituents. So they're like super hardworking, really compassionate. And then there's her parliamentary assistant who kind of does all of her diary and that kind of thing. And I was on her like communication side. So that's kind of like a typical office setup. But it does vary MP to MP. MPs can choose like the pay of their staff. So it's actually quite interesting. You can have 2 people doing the same job on like vastly different salaries.
Interesting.
So,
How does that work then? Like,
well, I think they get like a
justified?
budget and they can kind of choose. But the thing is, it gets published like how much expenses they're using, and obviously staff costs are involved in that. So some MPs are quite cautious of it looking bad, but other MPs are actually like, it's good if we have a smaller team and we pay our staff well.
You get
Do
an
you see what I mean?
extra moat then,
So there's like no, but to be fair, I think like the MP I worked for example, she was very careful. She didn't claim on any because she thought the taxpayer shouldn't pay for my nice selfie mirror or whatever.
Did she lose by a lot in the election, or was it quite close?
She did, but it wasn't a huge amount. But the problem is it's the classic case of Conservative and Reform vote splitting. So it like the seat is actually a bit of a right wing seat, but because of the way that Reform and Conservative votes were split, it meant that the Labour got in. But if you added the Conservative and Reform votes together, then they were obviously higher than Labour. But I know that's not exactly how it works. But that was the case in quite a lot of seats, actually. You had some really, really like right-wing seats where, Reform and Conservatives were almost double the vote of Labour. But Labour still got in just because of that split.
And then like the day she loses, is it just like, okay, you're out, next person in the next day?
Yeah. I mean, like there's like a winding down period and obviously a chance to like pack up her office, but it's pretty like brutal. And also, once the election is called, the MP cannot help any of the constituents apart from in absolutely emergency cases like a matter of life and death. So it's actually really weird that when an election calls, you basically, if you're like in trouble for anything and you need your MP, you don't have one to contact, which I actually found really, really fascinating.
What's like the most amazing thing that MP helped somebody do? Or
she did loads of stuff. Like she got, honestly, like even when she didn't keep her seat, she just got absolutely inundated with messages of all the things that she did, because she was one of those MPs that really, really focused on her constituency. She wasn't really bothered about climbing the political ladder. In fact, she even resigned from her minister job because she just wanted to focus on her constituency. So yeah, just amazing things, like people having all sorts of kind of bother from like debt collectors wrongly. And yeah, it's really like, honestly, the power of an MP getting involved in these things is actually crazy. Like you can really feel like at a dead end, and suddenly like the MP gets involved and it all gets sorted like magic. So if anyone is ever struggling, contact your local MP, guys. It really does do biz.
Nice. And then like my final question, I always ask this, is around life advice that you'd pass on to the next person on the podcast. So whatever it is, regardless of who they are, where they come from, what would you give them that you hold dear?
I'd say that there's always going to be people that don't like you, so you might as well just do what you want anyway. Honestly, like no matter what you do, there is just always going to be people that disagree with you, so you might as well just be yourself. Like who actually cares what other people think? And also, if you're kind of your true self, then you realise who your true friends are anyway. I certainly did.
Wicked.
Well, thanks so much for coming on.
Thank
It's
you.
been interesting. The time has flown by.
Yeah, I can't believe it.
Well, I feel like we've covered a lot of things. But yeah, thanks so much for coming on.
No, thank you.
Yeah, we'll see you guys next time.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.